This episode is sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First, it's free, so, doesn't get any cheaper than that. Second, there are creation tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. I'm editing this podcast from a Chromebook using the web, so it's pretty easy to do. If I can do it, you can certainly do it. Third, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and so many more services. So you don't have to go to each individual podcast service and distribute it yourself. It automatically does that for you, so that's pretty awesome. Fourth, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So, it's a pretty good way to make some money. And then, last but not least, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app for iOS or Android, or go to Anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started, or download the app for iOS or Android today.
Hello, and welcome to the Cels Circuits Podcast. I am your host, Chibeze Anakor, and on this episode, we'll be talking about PS5 versus Xbox in part 4 of our ongoing series, and then we will also talk about Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda, and then after that, we'll get into Amazon Luna and the start of the cloud gaming wars. And without further ado, let's jump right into it.
In this segment, we're going to be talking about Xbox versus PS5, and this is going to be part 4 of our ongoing series, and it may end up being the final episode of this because the consoles are about to release soon. But I do have to tell you that we have a guest, and our guest for this segment is a friend and a huge supporter of the podcast, and his name is Noah Kolos. So, Noah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Chibeze. I'm real excited to be here and appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine. So, tell us a bit about yourself before we get into the topic.
Yeah, so, I'm a huge nerd. That's kind of, how I fell in love with the podcast. Been playing video games since probably before I could talk. So, something I have a little bit of background knowledge in, and, I work in IT, so I'm just surrounded by technology all the time, and excited to talk to you about the consoles here.
Awesome. And yeah, thank you for supporting the podcast. You've been very great help for me. Seeing your support has really motivated me to do better. So, I really appreciate that. And what better way to thank you than to have you as a guest on an episode. So
I'll try and keep it up to your golden standard.
you don't have to, or I don't, or I'm not, expecting anything. Just, we're just trying to have a casual conversation. So let's get into it. So in the previous segment of PS5 versus Xbox, we talked about the July showcase for Xbox, and we talked about, I believe, the PS5 showcase, if I'm not mistaken. But there's been a lot of new info that has come out since then. So we can definitely talk about that. I believe the previous episode that I talked about PS5 versus Xbox was in episode 12. So if you missed that, I'll refer you to that episode. But we're going to be talking about the big things that were revealed about both consoles, particularly the things that people waited the most time for, which were prices and release dates. And then we're going to get into launch game lineups and then next gen upgrade strategies. So let's talk prices first. And before we get into prices, I should mention that ever since the last segment, the Xbox Series S was actually announced. So that is actually the cheapest of all of the next gen consoles, coming in at $299 US, followed by the Xbox Series S or X, excuse me. Whew, this is going to be a tongue twister. Xbox Series X at $499. And then you have the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition for $399 and the PS5 Regular Edition matching the Xbox Series X's price at $499. So what do you think of these price points for the different consoles?
Yeah, well, first off, I was definitely a little surprised with the Series X. I expected at least at launch for it to be just the regular console and then the digital edition. It was
Right.
definitely, yeah, it was definitely a surprise, but I mean, it makes sense because everyone was so worried that, these are going to be $700-800 consoles with the tech specs that they were kind of talking about. So I guess that's my first impression is props to both Sony and Microsoft for using all their connections to keep prices, about the same generation to generation. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that because Microsoft is such a huge company, it's like a $1.5 trillion company. I think
Yeah.
they're able to actually take the loss on the actual console to
Hmm.
try and make it as price competitive as possible. And so, I also thought it was going to be like $600, $700, but thankfully, Microsoft was able to get the Series X's price down to 500, and Sony was just waiting on Microsoft, I guess, to reveal the price, and they were able to match it. I didn't think they were going to be able to match that, but they
Right.
did. So
Yeah, it was a little
props to
game of
them.
chicken.
Yeah, it was a huge game of chicken that went on for like months.
I
And we're going to talk about how well that went later on. But I also want to talk about like the different approaches that each company is doing. So Microsoft seems to have cornered the market in like both segments. Like, for example, do we have the most powerful console? Yes, we have the Series X. Do we have the most affordable console? Also, yes, the Xbox Series S. And so, like,
yeah.
whereas with the PlayStation, you have like two consoles with pretty much identical hardware, with the exception of the disk drive that's in the regular edition of the PS5 that's not in the digital edition. So it costs $100 less. So what do you think that, or do you think that or do you think that the lower price point of the Series S may draw people over to the Xbox side? Or do you think that, people are just going to still go with PlayStation no matter what? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be, if nothing else, a small portion of kind of the people that were on the fence, not sure, okay, well, what's going to be my console this generation? I think,
Right.
it's one of those things where some people have a team and they're just going to stick with that no matter what happens, and I think that's
Yeah.
just inevitable. But
Yeah.
I know I was thinking, okay, well, PlayStation is probably what I'm going to go. I had a PlayStation 4. I enjoyed a lot of the Sony exclusives, but seeing that $299 price point definitely has me reconsidering if I need the latest and greatest of everything. If maybe
Right.
I'll just pick that up and save a little bit of money.
Right. And I think that because the pandemic happened in this crapshoot of a year, we or people are definitely more price conscious. So I think having the
Yeah.
most affordable console will definitely work in Xbox's favor. But at the
Right.
same time, just having the amount of great games that PlayStation has
Yeah.
also works to its advantage. And we'll definitely talk about launch game lineups later on.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's definitely going to be. I feel like it's going to be two things. One, like I was kind of discussing before, where just like people in the whole Apple versus Android thing, you look at
Right.
Apple, and honestly, a lot of the stuff is either identical or it's not even as advanced as some of the Android phones, but they're $400 more, and people still buy them. So I think people know what they want, and we'll see how the pandemic plays into that, but there definitely will be some people that are like, oh, nope, I'm Sony die hard, and that's the only way for me. But they definitely
Yeah.
have some good games, so we'll see.
Yeah. The tribalist mindset of
Yeah,
gamers. Something that I've definitely ranted about on
yeah,
this.
yep,
If you
yep.
didn't listen to episode 14, depending on who you are, you may want to go listen to that, or, you may also be offended by it. And, sorry, but also kind of not sorry. But anyway, and we also have the release dates of
Mm.
both consoles. So Xbox Series S and X will be releasing on November 10th, and then PS5 will be releasing on November 12th here in the US and some other regions, whereas like all of the rest of the world would get it on the 19th, I believe, or if I remember correctly. And so with those release dates in mind, let's get into the launch game lineups. So, first up, we have the PS5's launch game lineup, which will include Demon Souls, Spider Man Miles Morales, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Destruction All Stars, Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, Astro's Playroom, Fortnite, of course, Godfall, Observer System Redo, and Sackboy: A Big Adventure. So, what are your thoughts on the PS5's launch games?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty excited for Spider-Man Miles Morales. I mean,
Sam.
the last Spider-Man that came out for PlayStation 4 was one of my favorite games. So it's just always fun to have a Spider-Man game, and it'll be interesting to see it from kind of a different Spider-Man's point of view, with it being Miles Morales.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, there.
Uh,
Go ahead.
or I was going to say, I think also the success of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse may have
Hmm.
played a role
Yeah,
in, Insomniac wanting to go in the direction of Miles Morales and telling the Spider-Man story from his side. So, which, is a testament to that movie, which was an awesome movie. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it, or please watch it. I think it's on Netflix, so
yeah.
yeah,
I just
definitely.
rewatched it on Netflix, and it was one of those movies that I went into the theaters and I was like, we'll see, cartoon Spider-Man, I don't know. But it ended up blowing me away. It was like one of my favorite
Yeah,
Spider-Man movies. It was so good.
yeah, me too. I have the Blu-ray of that
Oh, okay.
movie. I have the 4K Blu-ray because that was one of those where I'm like, okay, like this one, or it's that one and Black Panther. Those are the only two 4K Blu-rays that I have because, like, I value those movies so highly. And I mean, Akira 4K is about to be my third one.
Yes, there you go.
But back to the games. So, yeah, Spider-Man Miles Morales is speaking to me here for the reasons that I just mentioned. I enjoy, or the reasons that you just mentioned. And like, I enjoy the 2018 Spider-Man, and so I'm interested in seeing where Insomniac takes Miles Morales' story, especially now that they're officially in the PlayStation family since Sony bought them, I think, last year or so. So it'll be good to see them actually harnessing the power of the PS5, even though I'm going to get it on PS4 because it also has a version, or that game is also launching on PS4 at the same time. So
that's what I'm gonna do too. One, I don't know if I'll even be lucky enough to get a PS5, and two, I don't know. These launch titles look pretty good, but I usually wait until the mid-cycle refresh or whatever you want to call it comes out when the PS5 Slim or Pro or whatever they end up doing.
Yeah, for me, for the past like 10 months, I've been trying out, well, not trying out, but I've been doing a lot of my gaming via cloud gaming. So the platform that I usually game on is Google Stadia. So like I'll probably stick to that, though I'll be getting some of the games if they come on current gen consoles. I'll just be getting those games on there. But once the true next gen games come out, that'll only be available on next gen. Once those come out, then I may consider getting a next gen console. So that's where I'm at with that.
Right.
So let's get into the Xbox ones, or the launch titles. So we have, for Xbox, we have Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Bright Memory, Dirt 5, Devil May Cry 5, and then FIFA 21, Fortnite, of course, Gears 5, and then Gears Tactics, which, yeah, is previously a PC exclusive, but now is coming to console on Xbox. And then Marvel's Avengers, which was surprising to me because that's on current gen consoles now. And then NBA 2K21, Observer System Redo, RPG Time, The Legend of Wright, Samurai Spirits, Tetris Effect, Connected, The Falconeer, Watch Dogs Legion, and Yakuza Like a Dragon. So Xbox has a bit more on the launch lineup, even though they did lose the big title, and that's of course Halo Infinite. That got delayed to next year. We don't know when next year. We just know it's going to be next year. So
I know someone at Microsoft was so mad when they had to make that announcement.
yeah. It's like, man, we're gonna disappoint the fans again. But
as long as the actual game doesn't, it'll all be forgiven.
yeah, exactly. But because Halo has been one of the like system sellers for Xbox for a very long time, so it makes sense that Microsoft would continue to focus on it. But it is nice to see that they at least have some sort of a good launch lineup of games. Let's see. I don't think any particularly stick out to me as I want to try that. And plus, I think most of these will be on current gen consoles anyway. So
Yeah. There was
I
one I saw. It was the Medium. I don't know if you saw that one, but
oh yeah.
yeah, that one looked like it might be interesting. I don't know if it's just going to be a gimmick with the whole dual reality gameplay thing where it's, I guess it's side by side, but I at least want to see if it gets good reviews and stuff because I was like, well, hey, if nothing else, it's something different than I've ever seen. So,
Right. And I think horror games are going to be like, I think people are really going to be a bit more interested in Medium, which I'm surprised we haven't really gotten much more news about,
right.
especially, going into, we're about to go into October, which is the
Yeah,
spooky
yeah.
month.
Yeah.
So it's like, so like I'm very surprised that we haven't gotten any more information on Medium yet. But people really seem to enjoy horror games. So, I mean, I'm or I'm not one of them, but like I try and dabble here and there, but I or sometimes I just, or if I play it like late at night, I'm just gonna get scared. And that's
Yeah.
probably very embarrassing to admit, but
Nah, man, I'm right there with you. I remember playing the original BioShock, and I was like 10 or 11 when that came out, I guess, and playing with the lights off, and every couple of seconds I'm looking behind my shoulder, like, what the hell was that? Something just ran by me. But yeah, I gotta be playing. I gotta play horror games for an audience. If I'm playing by myself, I'll get in my own head and swear I hear stuff that wasn't even there.
yeah, you see, like I could see you playing like Dead by Daylight, which is actually launching, I think, this Thursday on Google Stadia with
Okay.
crowd choice, which is a Google Stadia feature that allows you to control, or that allows a streamer's audience to control which side that they're going to be playing on. So, oh, oh man, my phone just went crazy because I have a Pixel, but
Oh.
I triggered the assistant. So anyway, but yeah, I could see you doing that as a way to, like, engage an audience. And I'm sure Dead by Daylight will probably come to next gen consoles as well, considering it's a multi-platform game. Though I don't know if the next gen consoles will have like the crowd choice feature that Google Stadia does because it's in the cloud. Probably
Yeah.
not. I don't see how that would be possible, but I could
Right.
be wrong. I could be wrong. But I want to go back to the PS5 one because, or the launch game lineup on PS5 includes Demon Souls, and that I think is a game that's only going to be on the PS5, if I'm not mistaken. And that one, since it's a first party game and it's a next gen game, the price is also increasing on that. And it's going to be $70 for the for that game. So like, and Demon Souls isn't the only game that's going to be having that price point. It seems that
Right.
next gen prices across the board are going to be $10 more than they are right now. So, like, what are your thoughts, like the price increase?
I mean, it's one of those things that it sucks. I mean, it makes sense from a business perspective. It's like, oh, it's the dollar's not worth what it used to be. We're gonna charge more. It's next gen graphics, all that stuff. But it,
Right.
it definitely, you feel like someone's doing you dirty because, if you look at like going from even Xbox 360 to Xbox One X and PlayStation 3 to
Yep.
PlayStation 4, there wasn't that price increase. I mean, the
Yep.
the, the only thing you saw is I feel like there was a huge increase in the amount of, $300 collector's edition for games, but the actual base games stayed at $60. So it does feel kind of like a low blow, but it's one of those things where it's like, well, there's nothing I can really do.
Yeah.
Too
uh,
many people are still going to pay the $70 for them to make a difference. So, what can you
Unfortunately,
really
yeah.
do?
Yeah. Capitalism.
Yeah, that's a whole
Uh,
nother topic.
that's a whole nother topic for a different podcast, not
Yeah,
this one.
yeah, you gotta get
Um,
the politics episode going on.
yeah. Oh my God. So let's see. But yeah, I mean, which which console do you think has a better launch game lineup?
I'm trying to think here. I'm pulling up a list to see. I mean, I guess I was most interested in some of the games that Xbox was showing. Like I mentioned, the
Mm-hmm.
Medium, Call of the Sea looked like it might be something
Oh,
unique.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Everwild, that's
yeah,
going to be awesome once, or I hope that's going to be awesome
yeah.
when it comes out. I
That's
I
all we
shouldn't
can
say
do.
it's going to be awesome. I should say I hope it's going to be awesome. And I hope it's going to be a return to form from Rare because I think they're the studio that's making that. So because yeah, Rare has been on a bit of a slump, but they've started to come back up with things like Sea of Thieves and Battletoads that
Yeah,
recently came out, which I like and I like playing, and even my girlfriend likes playing, and she doesn't even like Xbox like that, but she
yeah, yeah.
saw me playing Battletoads and wanted to jump in, and so yeah, we beat that game, but I
That's.
hope. Or go ahead.
And I was gonna say that's always a good sign when you even get the girlfriend interested enough to beat a game with you.
Exactly. We beat the game in like 4 hours, so
Oh wow.
it's not a huge time commitment.
Right, right.
But I mean, if you're playing single player, it might be. But yeah, it's a rare. I definitely am interested in Everwild, and I also hope to see more games from Rare. Banjo Kazooie, please.
It's dear
Um,
God.
but yeah, I really want a Banjo Kazooie game. Like Microsoft, like like that's all I want is a Banjo Kazooie game. Like we
Charge
didn't
me
get
$80 for it. I just want a
exactly
Banjo
like
Kazooie game.
charge me like 70, $80 for it. I will pay it. I will get a Series X just to get that game. Uh, but in all seriousness, yeah, I mean, like even some games that are going to be coming outside of the launch window, like you mentioned, the Medium, or for the Xbox side, we have the Medium, we have Everwild, we have Call of the Sea. But then on the PlayStation side, I don't know when Horizon Forbidden West is coming out. So I think it's going to be sometime in 2021, but I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember like some of the other games that PlayStation showed off in their recent showcase. Because all I cared about was like, okay, what's the price going to be?
You're right.
Like,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we had already known what the Xbox price was, so like that was all I was waiting for.
yeah.
But
And that's the thing. I feel like, even Horizon Forbidden West, like that's also coming to PlayStation 4. So I just feel like there's not a whole lot of a incentive, unless, you really need the next generation everything, right
right,
away to make that jump.
yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, there's not really much to really draw you in unless you really want to get into Demon Souls, like because I think that's going to be or Godfall because that's also I think a PS5 exclusive.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah, I forgot about Godfall.
Yeah, so unless you're getting one of those two games or both,
Right.
then like there's not really much of an incentive to get a PS5. You could stick with a PS4 and be all right for like a year or two. Um,
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's like I was excited too for Deathloop, but that's going to be coming out on PC as well, so it's not even a true
yeah,
PS5 exclusive.
true, and it's going to be well, not only PS5 exclusive, but also like it'll be coming on Xbox at some point because Microsoft bought out Bethesda.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So yeah, so like it'll depend on like what Microsoft wants to do with that. I know they'll definitely put it on Game Pass, whether for console, PC, or both. So, like, if you can wait until that timed exclusivity period is over, then, like, and you're in the Xbox camp, just wait on that.
Yeah.
That'll probably be like 2022 or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that for me has been the biggest surprise out of all of this. I remember, going on Reddit and seeing, Microsoft buys Bethesda Studios. I said, "What in the world?" And they said, "All right, here's my ace up my sleeve."
Maybe this will entice you.
Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, I think that it's going to be a very interesting console generation or this gen because Sony has, their, really great exclusives that they're going to continue to push, but it seems that Microsoft is really investing in getting some exclusives for themselves as well, but or not only just getting exclusives, but also investing in technologies like cloud gaming for or particularly Xbox Game Pass, which is something that PS5 or PlayStation still has yet to really compete with. I know
right.
they have PS Now, but
Yeah.
is that really the same?
No,
I
I don't think so.
I don't think so. But or I should also mention like the the next gen upgrade strategies. So with PlayStation, you had the whole Spider-Man Miles Morales fiasco where like if you have a current copy of Spider-Man PS4, like your save won't transfer over to the remastered version on the PS5 if you get that console. So like that I can imagine people who are getting the ultimate edition of Spider-Man Miles Morales, which includes the remastered version of Spider-Man PS4. They're probably mad,
Yeah.
and I would be too if I were getting a PS5 at launch and getting that game on PS5, but I am not.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's understandable. But I also, well, no, cause no, I can't find a way to justify that. But like, that's just so anti-consumer,
I
really.
know. Yeah,
Yeah, and when you compare that to what Xbox is doing with smart delivery, where if you get a game on, say, Xbox One right now, and then you later decide to get a Series X, and then you pop your Xbox One game disc into there, it'll automatically upgrade to the Series X version if there's a Series X version available. So, like, that's really awesome that Xbox is doing that so you don't have to buy the same game twice, which you have to do with Spider-Man Miles or Spider-Man on PlayStation. So,
yeah,
like, what are your thoughts on both consoles' next gen upgrade strategies?
yeah. So I feel like that's kind of the one of the bigger takeaways for this next generation. they're definitely testing a lot of pricing models. They're like, okay, how successful can we be? How much can we try to squeeze from the consumers and it
Yeah.
still work? So, that's a little, I guess, frightening from a consumer perspective, but I definitely appreciate Xbox's delivery a lot more because anytime I don't have to buy two copies of the same game, it's great. It's I feel like if I recall correctly, that was like a big problem with Mass Effect save files and
Yep.
like 2 generations ago now, I guess, where with Mass Effect the save files directly impacted the next game, and there was all these issues with people buying new consoles that couldn't transfer things over. So you would have think
Yep.
Sony would have learned something from that whole fiasco. But I mean, hey, if they can pry a few 100,000 copies from people to get it on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, and they just might get away with it.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate that Sony is going this route of still being the less consumer friendly option, because I think that's something that Xbox has really been trying to or that Xbox has really been trying to appeal consumers with, like with backwards compatibility, like at the
Yeah.
beginning of the current generation, with the Xbox One and the PS4, or I should say, not at the beginning, but like towards the middle of the current generation, Xbox had introduced backwards compatibility with Xbox 360 games, and then later on they did the original Xbox games, or some of the original Xbox games, and you know people who were on the PlayStation side and were like, oh, well, why would I even need backwards compatibility? And now,
Yeah.
going into the PS5, where backwards compatibility is an area that Sony is severely lagging in compared
Yeah.
to Microsoft, like, a lot of people are getting much harder on Sony for, not being as backwards compatible as Microsoft's, because I think for the Xbox, the Series X and S will both play Xbox One games, of course, and then 360 all the way back to the original Xbox. And then for the PS5 is confirmed to have support for quote unquote 99% of PS4 games and nothing beyond that.
Yeah, which like
So,
what does that mean? 99%. It's
right,
it's
like
it's
what's
like
that 1%?
yeah, it's like, oh, the 1% is what we're adding to PS Now, and you'll have to pay, 7.99 a month to play, or whatever. I don't even remember what the price is, but I feel like that's been Sony's take on backwards compatibility. Oh, we have PlayStation hits that you can pay to stream even if you already own copies of the discs.
Right. And like that's something that I think Sony is really struggling with trying to compete with Xbox on, especially their attempt to address that was with the PlayStation Plus collection, which has like a collection of the greatest hits
Hmm.
on PS4 that you'll be able to play on PS5, once that console launches. So you'll at least have something to play.
Right.
Mm, because the launch lineup, just isn't really that big for PlayStation, but that's not really a problem on Xbox, especially if you have the discs for all of those games and you get the Series X. You just pop it in, boom, you're done. Like,
Are you more of a disc guy, or you buy
uh,
digital copies?
I'm definitely more of a disc guy,
Gotcha.
though. Like, or I guess I could say I'm a bit of both, because I do. or like I said earlier, I do have like a Google Stadia membership, and I
Right.
also have a Xbox Game Pass Ultimate membership where I've downloaded games to my Xbox digitally that, I haven't bought physically, even though
Gotcha.
physical versions exist.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I get my games both digitally
Mhm.
and physically, but I have too many physical games to turn back on physical games. So
Gotcha.
if I were shopping around for consoles, I would definitely get both the Xbox and the PlayStation with the disc drive because like there's
Yeah.
just no turning back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely know some people with some massive collections, especially if, just even the last generation of games. But I also wonder like how many people the deciding factor of going with a disk drive versus not is, oh, hey, I watch a lot of Blu-ray or DVDs, Like I
Oh,
wonder how many
yeah.
people still care, or everyone's just on Netflix and things like that now. I don't know.
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah, because if you don't have a single Blu-ray to your name, then or DVD to your name, then yeah, I mean, the digital versions could, be very attractive. And if you haven't bought a game physically at all either, then yeah, the digital versions could be very attractive, especially on the Xbox side where the Series S is cheaper at
Mhm.
$299. So that's something I didn't think about. So I'm glad you brought that point up.
Yeah, it was just
Because
something
yeah,
I just thought of because I was like, oh yeah, I wonder how many people still, use Blu-ray or have a lot of, or like their console is their Blu-ray player.
right. Yeah, for me, that's definitely where I'm at. I have an Xbox One X and a PS4 Pro. Either one of those I could use as a Blu-ray player, with the exception of the two 4K Blu-rays that I had mentioned earlier on, because the PS4 Pro doesn't have a 4K Blu-ray drive. I think the Blu-ray drive is only supporting up to 1080p. So I have to use my Xbox One for that. But that is a problem that won't exist on the upcoming generation because both consoles have 4K Blu-ray drives. So no matter which Blu-ray you get, whether it's a regular 1080p Blu-ray or 4K Blu-ray, you'll be able to play it on either console, as long as it has a disc drive.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And then by the end of this generation, I'll be like, oh man, the Series X and PlayStation 5 don't have Blu-ray 8K support.
yeah. I'm sure there'll be like some sort of mid-gen refresh that adds
Yeah.
that. Though I worry on the PlayStation side because they didn't, or for the PS4 Pro, like I said, they didn't add a 4K Blu-ray player, even though Sony makes 4K Blu-ray
Right.
players. So
Yeah.
it's like, how do you get beaten by Microsoft at
Yeah.
your own game? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
makes no sense.
Yeah. I wonder if
um,
it just is as simple as, oh, we don't think too many people are even using these as a Blu-ray player. Because I mean, I did just look it up, and on Amazon you can get a 4K Blu-ray player for like $60. So maybe it's not as much of a deciding factor as I thought it might be.
yeah. So I think if anything, I mean, it would, or I think it would like save people from, not having to buy two devices, but
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
at, and it'll also like the or depending on how often you watch Blu-rays, save like on an electric bill or something like that. I don't know.
Less controllers. I guess there's a couple
Yeah.
things.
There, yeah, there are a couple of things. There are a couple of benefits, like less remotes to deal with and
Yeah.
things like that. But I think this upcoming console generation is going to be an interesting one, especially with I think it's going to test how long physical media is really going to last. Because, I think once the game consoles go all digital or even to the cloud, or where
Yeah.
the cloud ones are just the only options left, I think that'll probably just spell the end of physical media.
Yeah. GameStop is sweating right now.
Yeah. Oh man. Cuz with GameStop, you got to wonder, especially with the pandemic, but
Mhm.
even before then, you have people who buy their or people buy their games on Amazon,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
if they're physical,
Yeah.
or if not, they'll just go digital
Yeah.
and get it off the PlayStation Store, Xbox Store, eShop for Nintendo. And then what customers are left
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it'll
but
definitely be interesting to see how all that plays out. And this is a little off topic, but I did see, right before all this pandemic stuff was starting, GameStop
mhm,
was testing having kind of like PC cafes in some of their bigger stores.
mhm.
But I'm like, even at that point, most of the GameStops I know are in a strip mall, and you could maybe fit 3 computers in the back of the store. But
Yeah. And yeah, and I think also the downsizing and collapse of malls may also impact GameStop as well. So yeah, but I think this is going to be a really interesting console generation. So which console do you think will sell more units, or which ecosystem will sell more units, like Xbox or PlayStation?
I think right now I'm gonna go with Xbox, and that's just because of the Series S. I think it'll win over enough people with having the lowest price tag that they'll hold at least a little bit of the market share.
Yeah, let's see. Or as for me, I think that it's kind of tough. I mean, both consoles sold out,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah, that's
very
true.
hard to tell. But I think that initially PlayStation may sell more units, but over time, especially if Sony continues with the strategies like they did with Spider-Man Miles Morales, where you couldn't upgrade your Spider-Man PS4 game to the remastered version on PS5. I think if they continue practices like that, they may end up they may end up losing ground to Xbox later on in the generation, because I
Hmm.
think Microsoft really learned from the Xbox One's launch, and Phil Spencer, props to him and the Xbox team. They've really been course correcting
Yeah,
through all these years leading up to the upcoming console generation, and, trying to be more consumer friendly. So I think initially, because of the hype,
yeah,
PlayStation is probably going to sell more units. But, if Sony continues doing these anti-consumer practices, I think they may end up losing some ground to Xbox later
yeah,
on.
yeah. No, we'll definitely have to see. It'll be interesting. I mean, the other thing I guess to think about is, well, PlayStation 4 sold significantly more units
Yep.
than the Xbox. And at the end of the
Yep.
day, if you're deciding between one or the other, and all your buddies are playing on PlayStation, and just with how popular multiplayer games are, I think that might be another deciding factor. So we'll just have to see.
Yes. Yeah, I do agree with that. Though I will say, like, if your friends play like a lot of multi-platform titles, then, it wouldn't really matter all as much. But if they're playing like a lot of exclusive games, uh,
Yeah.
then yeah, it's definitely, or then it'll definitely matter which one that you get if you want to play with your friends. But like, I feel like a lot of games now have incentive to have crossplay
Yeah.
enabled, which is a good thing that's been happening in recent years. So, and with all of these platforms coming out, like, the new gen consoles, and
Hmm.
then you also have the cloud gaming platforms like, Google Stadia, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and the recently announced Amazon Luna. Like, I think all of these platforms coming out like right around the same time, like
Yeah.
really entice developers to integrate crossplay into their games. So yeah, it'll be a very interesting, or like the next few years of games I'm really excited for. I can't wait.
Yeah. And I guess, that's another thing, the whole cross-platform, that's something Sony's been kind of lagging behind in. Because
Yep.
I know that they're always, oh no, these are our games. We don't want to, intermingle or whatever you want to call it with
Yep.
the cross-platform stuff. So either way, I think we have a lot of good games ahead, like you said, and as the cloud platforms are exciting. So it's definitely not a dull time to be a gamer right now.
Is definitely not. And just like one last thing before we close out. So, with the PlayStation studios and Xbox game studios, like both platforms are going to have a lot of like exclusive games. I know with the Microsoft acquisition of Bethesda, there's been like a lot of talk about which games will be exclusive to Xbox, or which ones they'll release on other platforms on a quote unquote case by case basis.
Yeah.
So like so I want to know, based on like all of the trailers that you've seen of games coming in the future, which platform do you think has the more compelling future titles?
Mm. Yeah, that's tough because I think for me, I primarily play on my computer. So,
Right.
I'm very interested in a lot of what the Xbox is going to offer and as future launch titles, but a lot of those I can play through my PC. So,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know how many other people fall in that same boat. I
Right.
think, traditionally just the titles that Sony has fall more in line with what I like to play. So off the bat, I'd say Sony just because they have, even like probably one of the things I'm most excited for is the new Horizon game. So
Yeah.
I think that that'll probably be a lot of fun if it's anything like the first one. And Spider-Man alone kind of wins me over to say Sony. What about you?
Yeah. I would say, no, yeah, I'd say Sony, mainly because Sony is more focused on like single player experiences, where I
Hmm.
think with Xbox, they're more focused on games that you can play with friends, which, is not, or neither approach is bad. Like, I
Yeah.
think, there are some good things about each of them. But like you said, Sony definitely does have the exclusive titles that appeal to me more. And also, like you said, particularly Spider-Man Miles Morales. Like, if that game didn't have a PS4 version launching on it, I would
Yeah, that's
be
true.
looking into getting a PS5 just to play that game.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
honestly, 2018 Spider-Man is why I ended up buying my PS4. There's just something about swinging around in a video game as Spider-Man that just gets me going.
I mean, like, you know, just that and the fact that it's done by Insomniac, which
Yep. Yep.
is a great game studio that's also done Sunset Overdrive for Xbox. I think that was an
Yeah.
exclusive on Xbox
Yeah,
for
that's true.
console. So like they've they've done like, a lot of pretty incredible games. So, you know, props to Insomniac. And I think that was probably, or Spider-Man PS4 was probably the deciding factor on like whether Sony wanted to buy Insomniac or not. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Plus the prospect of a second Ghost of Tsushima game has me, leaning towards PlayStation 2.
oh God, oh man, I still need to finish Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah, I still need to finish that, though I am enjoying what I'm playing so far. So, and I'm wondering if games like that will, or if you insert your PS4 disc into the PS5, whether it'll, have like increased resolution
Mm,
upgrades or like frame rate upgrades, like,
right.
up to like 120 frames a second or something like that.
Yeah.
So that'll be curious to see people who actually do get the consoles test. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this next console generation,
Hmm.
and I think it's a great time to be a gamer.
Hell yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Thank you, Noah, for joining me on this episode and, just talking PS5 versus Xbox. This is a nice swan song to this series. So I think I can retire it,
Yeah.
knowing that it was a pretty good series. But
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Thanks again
Um,
for having me. It was fun.
of course, and you know, this will probably not be the last time that I have you on. I definitely want to have you on future episodes, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, so before we close out, do you have anything to say to our listeners?
I guess it's something you've already talked on, but don't let any one person decide for you either way. Just go with whatever you think is your console of choice.
Thank you. And that's a wonderful message to close out on. Thank you once again, Noah. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. You've been a really great supporter of the show. And I don't know if you want to share where people can find you on the internet or not, but if you do, you can definitely share that. If you don't, that's fine too.
Yeah, I don't really do much on the internet, so I don't really have anything to share, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh no, that's perfectly fine. And we'll always be, you can, you can definitely reach out, and I will definitely I would love to have you whatever episode that you want to be on. So you know, you're a friend to the podcast is
Oh, well,
what
I
I'll say.
appreciate it. I'm
Like,
glad I did okay enough. You want me back, so I'll definitely be in touch.
I mean, you did more than okay. You did awesome. But yeah, that's going to do it for this segment. If you want to support the show, you can shop our merch. I have the link to that in the show notes. Or you can also support us on Coffee. I will also have a link to that in the show notes. And yeah, that's going to do it. And thank you for listening.
Up next, we'll be talking about Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda, and then after that, we'll get into Amazon Luna and the start of the cloud gaming wars. The Cels and Circuits podcast will return in a moment. Hey, Cels and Circuits listeners, want to support the show without having to buy any merch? Well, you can do that by buying us a coffee. All it takes is just $1 to help support the show. So click the link in the show notes or go to ko-fi.com/Cels and Circuits to help make the Cels and Circuits podcast a better show for you.
Welcome back. And now it's time to start talking about Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda. So last week, Microsoft announced that they were buying ZeniMax Media, the parent company of Bethesda Softworks, for $7.5 billion. And that was a huge story that shook the entire gaming industry. And I think it's going to start off a trend. So let's talk about this acquisition and what it could mean for the future of Xbox and what it could also mean for the future of gaming. So let's start off with what Microsoft got for that $7.5 billion price. So they bought all the companies under ZeniMax Media. So those consist of Alpha Dog Games, Arcane Studios, Bethesda Softworks, id Software, Machine Games, Roundhouse Studios, Tango Gameworks, and ZeniMax Online Studios. So now the number of studios Microsoft owns is now 23. And so that's quite a lot of studios under one company's belt. So I think Microsoft now has enough studios, in my personal opinion. At least they have enough Western studios. But if they expanded more into Japan, then that's an area where I could see Microsoft going next. But anyway, what does this mean for the future of Xbox? So I think the first thing is that we can pretty much put the Xbox has no games argument to rest, because with this acquisition, Microsoft now owns the Elder Scrolls franchise, Doom, Prey, The Evil Within, Fallout, and so many others that are under ZeniMax Media. So the notion that Xbox has no games can officially be put to bed, or like no one can say that anymore. But also it means that if you want to play a Western RPG, Xbox is pretty much the place to go for that, because like I said, with the franchises that I just mentioned earlier, those are almost all, if not all, RPGs made by Western companies. So yeah, if you want to play Western RPGs, Xbox is the place to go for that. And this also means for Xbox Game Pass, it means that more and more titles will be coming to Xbox Game Pass that are part of the ZeniMax family. So Doom Eternal is coming out today as I'm recording this, October 1st. So that's just going to be the first of many Bethesda and ZeniMax titles that will be coming to Game Pass. And the important thing for the ZeniMax titles coming to Game Pass is that those titles most likely will not rotate, because Xbox Game Pass's business model is you get a bunch of rotating games, except for the ones that Microsoft either owns or has an exclusive license to. And so now that Microsoft owns the ZeniMax franchises, now those titles can be added to Game Pass without ever having to worry about whether they'll rotate out in a few months or not. So I think that's a pretty major point for Game Pass that just solidifies Game Pass's value. So if you ever doubted Game Pass's value, now this acquisition significantly drove up the value of Game Pass. So kudos to Microsoft. This is a huge power move for them, especially because they are playing in two spaces. They're playing in the physical console space against Sony and Nintendo, but they're also playing in the cloud gaming space thanks to Game Pass Ultimate against Google Stadia and the recently announced Amazon Luna, which we'll be talking about in the next segment, so stay tuned for that. But I think this acquisition was a really important one for Microsoft to make because Bethesda was also working on their own engine for cloud gaming and some other cloud gaming software that I don't know the specifics of. But if that means that Microsoft has the exclusive license to that software, that could be a game changer for Microsoft and put it well ahead of its competitors in the cloud space. So kudos to Microsoft. This was a power move, but I think the big question is, will ZeniMax's titles be Xbox exclusive in the future? And Microsoft has come out and said that they'll evaluate which ones will be exclusive to Xbox on a case-by-case basis. So, I mean, we all know that they're coming to Game Pass, but since Microsoft has $7.5 billion to recoup, I mean, it would not be in their best interest to keep everything exclusive to Xbox, because they'd be losing out on a lot of sales and a lot of money that could be going their way. So it would make more sense to put some of those ZeniMax titles on PlayStation or on Google Stadia, just so that more and more people can play them. And it also gives Microsoft a value play where you could pay $15 to get it on Game Pass and play it on Xbox, or you can pay $60 or $70 to play it on PlayStation or Google Stadia or what have you. So I think that it definitely raises the value of Game Pass, but I don't think that Microsoft will make every single title exclusive to Xbox. I think for titles that just make a lot of sense for it to be exclusive to Xbox, like they'll probably look at sales figures for previous entries in the franchise when they're looking to determine whether or not to make it exclusive. And if they determine it's not worth it to put it on other platforms, they'll just put it on Xbox and PC and call it a day. But if it has sold well on PlayStation or other platforms, then they'll leave it multi-platform, because studios that were acquired by Microsoft have still honored multi-platform releases, such as Mojang, the studio behind Minecraft. Minecraft has a PlayStation 4 version. It has a Nintendo Switch version. I don't know if Microsoft will make a Google Stadia version of Minecraft. Maybe. We will see with that, but I hope that comes to the platform. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Microsoft actually does that. But regardless, Minecraft has been multi-platform. And then also games that were previously Microsoft exclusive, like Cuphead, that came to the Nintendo Switch, which Microsoft has a partnership with Nintendo. But also, Cuphead recently came to the PS4, so it's not entirely without precedent that Microsoft would keep the ZeniMax titles multi-platform because they've done it before. And Microsoft also said that they'll honor existing contracts to keep timed exclusive games like Deathloop, which is going to be a PS5 timed exclusive, as well as Ghostwire Tokyo, which will also be a timed PS5 exclusive. So Microsoft doesn't seem to be as worried about exclusives. I would imagine if Sony had acquired Bethesda instead, or ZeniMax instead, they would keep as much of those titles on PlayStation as possible and shut all of the competitors out. But yeah, Microsoft seems to be more of a open kind of company. They seem to be pivoting towards that in recent years. Not just the Xbox division, but other parts of Microsoft as well. So it makes sense that Xbox would follow suit. But yeah, and what does this mean for the future of the gaming industry in general? Well, I think that we'll definitely start to see a lot more acquisitions and consolidation, as we've seen with the entertainment industry, with Disney buying Fox and Viacom and CBS re-merging, and AT&T acquiring Time Warner, and Comcast and NBC Universal. So I think we'll see more and more of that, but instead of it being the entertainment giants, it'll be the gaming giants. So I think we'll see Microsoft and Sony acquiring more studios, and Microsoft already said that they'll acquire more studios. So that's pretty much confirmed. Now we just don't know which studios, because it could be anybody at this point. But we could see Microsoft and Sony, but not only them, even cloud gaming contenders like Google and Amazon, they could also be acquiring studios for Google Stadia and Luna, respectively. So it's going to be a pretty interesting few years in gaming. But let me know what you think of the Microsoft acquisition of Bethesda and ZeniMax Media. Do you think that this will change the landscape of gaming? Do you think that Microsoft will keep a lot of ZeniMax titles exclusive to Xbox? Or do you think that they'll share with other platforms? Let me know on social media or on Discord. We can continue the conversation there. But that'll do it for this topic.
Up next, we'll get into Amazon Luna and the start of the cloud gaming wars. The Cels and Circuits podcast will be back after this.
Are you a small business looking for a financial platform to do business on? Check out Payment, the first Black-owned financial platform where you can do things like sending invoices, accepting payments, and more features will be added in the future. If you watch Trigger Warning with Killer Mike on Netflix, you know that money stays within the Black community for an average of 6 hours compared to the days and sometimes weeks that other communities get. So if you want to bring or keep money in the Black community, join Payment, that's PEYMYNT, at the affiliate link in the show notes today. Hey, Cels and Circuits listeners, did you know that we now have a merch store? It's true. In partnership with Bonfire, we've launched the Cels and Circuits shop, where you can find t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, and more. So hit the link in the show notes to visit the Cels and Circuits shop and start getting your merch today. It really does help out the show. Thanks for your support, and now, back to the show. Welcome back
To the Cels and Circuits podcast. And on this segment, we have a repeat guest, our first repeat guest. And if you listen to the previous episode, you probably know who it is. It is Avery Krause again from StadiaSource. Avery, welcome back to the show.
Fantastic, fantastic to be here again with amazing developments in the world of cloud gaming to talk about.
I know. Last week was a pretty big week for cloud gaming. Um, so, like, we might as well just get right to it. So, last week, Amazon announced at their hardware event that they were going to be launching a cloud gaming service called Luna. And Luna functions pretty much just like Google Stadia, except there are some differences, and we'll talk about those later in the episode. But it seems like they're using the same business model that Amazon uses for Prime Video, where you have a channel called Luna Plus, which gives you about 50 plus games per month. And then the Ubisoft channel will be coming later on, and that'll provide some more games for an additional monthly cost. So, kind of like how Amazon does with their channels on Prime Video. You have the regular Prime Video subscription, and then you have other channels that you can add on top, like HBO, Showtime, and other ones. So
Broadway HD.
exactly.
Okay.
so um Amazon has officially announced their entry into the cloud gaming space, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on this development and what it means for cloud gaming, since we both are, pretty experienced with cloud gaming, particularly with Google Stadia. So, I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this was an interesting development. We knew that something was coming because there have been rumors for a while for what had been codenamed Project Tempo, and that
Yep.
at some point Amazon was going to lift the veil on this, and it absolutely came out of nowhere last week, in the middle of them talking about their new Amazon Echoes, which are these adorable little balls now, and their new security system, which is a flying drone that will chase away their burglars. Then just 2 minutes on, oh, by the way, we launched a cloud gaming platform, and it's $6 a month, and here's the controller, and you can stream on Twitch, and you get a whole bunch of games, and Ubisoft's coming later. All right, thanks everybody, have a great day. And then so it was just absolutely out of nowhere, and it was almost a throwaway at the very end of their presentation. I think it might have been the last thing or second to last thing in there, and then suddenly there was a new player on the market. I have had a saying that I've said very, very frequently, that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so we are now meeting a moment where Google Stadia has a direct competitor. There's been, xCloud and now, Game Pass Ultimate, where it has the cloud streaming built in, certainly competes with Stadia for some eyeballs, but really Xbox is competing with PlayStation and Switch and PC. There's been GeForce Now, but GeForce Now is really a companion piece to Steam and GOG and all those other services. It's almost Epic Games. It's practically no different than Steam Link or whatnot, other than that it's their computer, not yours. And then there's Shadow, which is a whole different bag of chips. That's just a remote desktop. And so there has not been to this point a competitor to Stadia that was literally, we opened a cloud gaming service and had no other connections to it, no other business models underneath it. Just purely, there are servers in a cloud which are going to stream a game to you, and that is all Luna is. And it's a completely novel competitor in the field to Stadia. So what that puts me in a position as a Stadia enthusiast and a Stadia podcaster is, Now I'm looking to see what that competition does to push Stadia, to make them want to or have to grow and build and really make things explode because they have to, because it's time now. There's a competitor, and now they have to make things accelerate, or they're going to have a competitor that is going to outpace them. I'm beyond excited about this development.
Same here. So, with the with the announcement of Amazon Luna, and with Microsoft xCloud, even though it is a companion piece to the traditional Xbox, I think the stage for cloud gaming is now set with the three titans of the cloud, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, now all having their own cloud gaming services. And so, and then also with Microsoft and their recent Bethesda acquisition, now you have all of the ZeniMax franchises that are guaranteed to stay on Game Pass, because Game Pass is a library of rotating titles, with the exception of the ones that Microsoft owns. And so now that Microsoft owns more stuff, that means more stuff has the ability to stay on Game Pass forever.
As if there wasn't enough gaming news last week. That just Xbox buying Bethesda alone would have been enough had it, and then Amazon was like, hold my beer,
And so, like, I wanted to know, with Amazon using Windows as their backend on AWS, and with Google using Linux as their backend on the Google Cloud platform, how do you think that developers are going to approach putting games on Amazon Luna versus putting games on Stadia?
I think we're going to see. Imagine you're playing a racing game, and you've got multiple cars to pick from, and you've got, these cars they all have their stats. So you've got top speed, acceleration, handling, and what I think we're seeing is that the business decisions that are being made here are Amazon went for a high acceleration build. They wanted to be able to get games out as quickly as utterly possible to build a system that attracted folks to put down their credit card and get the recurring service. So Windows is a high acceleration platform. You are going to be able to put out more games quicker on Windows than anything else. Linux, being a bit more of a haul, but not that much, as we've seen a lot of developers say, Google is going for a high speed build for their car. They want to have a completely open source framework with open source APIs and open source technology to be able to build upon, to really get something crazy and powerful that no one else has ever done. So yeah, you're absolutely going to have a much, much larger library on Luna, much faster than any other platform. There's no doubt about that, aside from Game Pass, because they're running on Xbox servers. And so if it's out for Xbox, it could be on Game Pass in very few clicks, I would imagine. If you're just taking Luna versus Stadia, then Luna is absolutely going to have a huge library. They've announced in the vicinity of 100 games now, 50 from Luna, 50 from Ubisoft, and I can very much see within the next year there being a Square Enix channel and an EA channel and a Capcom channel and all of these other channels that give you 40, 50, 60 games at a pitch. Now, pricing being a whole other thing, which we can get into, but at least in terms of library, they're going to end up with probably several hundred games much faster than Google is even going to break the 200 mark. We've just broken the 100 mark, and it's going to be faster than we're going to break the 200 mark. The difference being Luna's going to get you Twitch streaming. Cool.
Right.
Twitch streaming is awesome. But there's nothing special about those servers. There's nothing different other than that, it's on AWS, so they can ramp up their containers if they need to. But they're not building any special architecture. They're not building any special APIs, any special SDK. So that we know of. So you're not going to get things like crowd play and crowd choice outside of the standard Twitch integrations and Stream Connect and State Share, because those all being very special Stadia features that are because they built their own thing from the ground up. Those are options and opportunities that Stadia is going to have that nobody else is going to have. Not to mention things like the elastic computing concept, where you can chain multiple Stadia blades together to do crazy things. Google's machine learning for game generation and AI-driven, storytelling and all of those kind of things. They're going for a lower acceleration, higher top speed. So I think in 5 years, let's imagine both of these platforms are still available in 5 years. Then you're going to end up with a situation where Amazon has a platform that has 500 or 600 games on it, and Stadia has a platform that has 300 or 400 games on it, and they're going to at that point be better games with more powerful features and more rich options. There's nothing to say that these games that have been released on Windows are not fantastic, but if you look at Uplay Plus, I'm super excited. Uplay Plus is going to come to Stadia at some point, and when it does, it's because Ubisoft has gone through and ported a bunch of games to the Stadia platform. But if you look at what's going to come to the Ubisoft channel on Luna, it's probably going to be newer stuff. You're going to get your Rainbow Sixes, you're going to get your Tom Clancy's, you're going to get all that stuff. But you're probably also going to get some old games for Windows that are compatible with controller and keyboard, even though they haven't actually announced whether or not it's a requirement yet. And so you're going to get crap from the 90s that might be fun for 20 minutes, but it's because it was so easy for them to just click a button and install it on that server, not because it required any work. So I don't necessarily know that a larger library is more valuable than a better library. And when you combine that better library with better features, I think that's where Stadia is going to win in the end. That's not to say I'm not excited for Luna. I subbed to the early access. I'm waiting for me to get my invite code, and whenever it lands, I'm going to be out there streaming, just like I'm streaming Game Pass right now. I played it on my phone over the weekend, and I want all of these things to succeed because they'll push each other to succeed, and you'll have to beat each other, and you're not going to beat each other on time. You're going to beat each other on features and library in this space.
Right. And I think that's an excellent point that you bring up there, that Stadia is going for quality rather than quantity. Because I remember someone from the Stadia team saying that they wanted a more curated experience. And from the games that they've been adding recently, it seems like, they're going after like a specific audience, people who are more into things like indie titles. Like you definitely see a lot of indie titles, though you're also seeing some AAA games as well. And I think they're doing the AAA games on a case-by-case basis. It seems like, but even though they already do have major developers confirmed that will be releasing games in the near future. And so, so what does this also mean going into the new console generation? Do you think that people would see the cost of like the new gen consoles like the PS5 and the Xbox series of consoles being too expensive, and just, you know what, I'm going to just get a Stadia or Luna controller and then just call it a day? Like, what do you think about that?
I think this speaks to the difference in business model between the two platforms. And it to a degree, I'm going to give them credit where credit is due. It speaks to the fact that Amazon clearly saw what the expectations that were not ever promised by Stadia, but somehow got created and then failed to be met, which is no fault of Stadia's, were.
Right.
So everyone thought that Stadia was going to be the Netflix of games. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It's a brand new console. It just doesn't happen to be a box under your TV. So Amazon says, well, hey, we'll just do the Netflix of games. Great. Everybody said, okay, well, Stadia is supposed to be, Stadia's going to have every game under the sun on it because it's the cloud and you can just have and they said, no, we're going to get all the new games and then we're going to bring games onto the platform as our developer partners ready to be them. Amazon said, no, we'll just take any, let's just get all kinds of games. I'm sure they're doing a little bit of curation, but, they're just going to take a lot more games because they have the platform to do it on.
Right.
They have, I'll also give it to them on this. Stadia's rollout was fraught with disaster. They simply did not understand the marketing that was needed for this. They hyped the power when the power isn't necessary for this to work properly. You don't need 1,000 teraflops to run Celeste in the cloud. So they, up until maybe the past 90 days, Stadia just didn't really get how to market their own platform, and that's changing. But Amazon, right out of the gate, their first commercial, their first video was person grabs their phone and they're playing a game, and then they pull up their TV and they're playing a game, and then they pause the game over here and they take it over there. And it's exactly the marketing that Stadia needed from moment one that they're just now getting to. They said, fine, Stadia, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, is in beta. Stadia is in beta, and the founders launch was maybe an alpha, but it was certainly a closed beta. And they've never said that. They've never said it out loud. Project Stream was the beta. No, Project Stream was an alpha. This is the beta. Founders was closed. Right now we're in open beta, but Stadia is not done yet. They've given us a minimum viable product, an MVP, but they have not delivered the finished product because we don't have crowd play, crowd choice, true state share, Creator's integration notwithstanding. We don't have family sharing. We don't have YouTube streaming. All of the things that were promised when Phil Harrison stood out in the stage with all the logos flying behind him at GDC. So what did Amazon do? Early access. This is early access, front and center. You're in early access, and everything in the world says early access, early access, early access. So they clearly learned from all of the missteps that Stadia made in the beginning and decided to take that a different route. That said, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do any better. That doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't going to be canceled in a year, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be still going 10 years from now. It just means that they had an opportunity to be second. And there's an advantage to moving first, but there's a bigger advantage to moving second because you can find out exactly what the first person did wrong. I think that's where the models of the two systems differ so much that you almost can't compare them to each other. In a very real sense, Luna is trying to compete for the same spot on your credit card that Netflix or Apple Music or Spotify or any of those services are. It's just $6, and if I want to watch something, I'm on my phone, and I'll pull up Hulu and I'll watch something. Or what, I didn't see that. There's that Luna thing. Oh, I've still got the Luna thing. Yeah, do you have your Bluetooth controller hooked up to the Fire Stick? Yeah, let me see if it's still paired. Cool, I'll go play 30 minutes of Watch Dogs Legion or whatever else. Whereas Stadia has always been, we're a console, we're just not under your TV. That's why you buy games, you don't subscribe. There's Stadia Pro, but there's not like a Netflix style thing because they're a console, they're just not under your TV. And so it's different mindsets with the same foundational concept underneath them. And that's where the next year is going to really come into sharp relief is, does Stadia pivot at all? Do they change their plans? Do they change their business model? Do they come out with Stadia Pro Plus that has stream the library? Or do they keep going to say, no, we're here to compete with Xbox Series X, we're here to compete with PlayStation 5, we're here to compete with Switch Pro whenever that comes out or whatever they call it. That's who we're competing with. We're not competing with Luna. And that's going to really, really determine what the next year of cloud gaming looks like. And that might not even be a year. That could be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years before that really gets defined. We are so much in the infancy of all of this. And that people just, one of my biggest pet peeves in the world. I have to say it over and over again. Stadia's only been out for 10 months. And Luna's only been out for 3 days. Like, these are not platforms with 3 decades of life underneath them like Nintendo and Sony and PlayStation.
Or an Xbox. Yep. Yeah.
My long-winded rant on the subject of their of their business models.
Oh no, you're fine. And I think that people definitely misunderstand, or there's been a lot of game journalism. If you're listening on the audio version, you can't really see, but I put up air quotes for that. But there's been a lot of game journalism and a lot of YouTubers that, or just been like, "Wah, I didn't get the Netflix of gaming from Stadia," and like that wasn't, or Google never said that was what it was going to be, but Amazon clearly wanted to fill that void, and I think it was very important that you mentioned that Amazon had the second movers advantage, because yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. They put from the get-go, it's an early access, it's invite only, and that, you have to request the code and everything. And seeing all of that, I have to wonder, do you think that Amazon is really trying to, I should say, trying to be an innovator in the space, or do you think that they're just, trying to, or you think they're just trying to ride the wave that Google had kind of started?
I think they're trying to sell more Fire TVs. That's it. Everything Amazon does, and Google the exact same, is to keep you inside their world. So Alexa is all about keeping you engaged with Amazon products. Why? Because, okay, so you got Alexa and then you're using that on your phone and then you realize we're out of toilet paper. Well, hey, Alexa's tied to Amazon shopping, so I can just ask Alexa to go buy it for me. Hey, great, that's super, super easy. Now I've just given Amazon more money. And then, well, I want to watch YouTube on my TV. Oh, well, I'd like to tell Alexa to do it. Well, she didn't talk to the Chromecast, so let me get a Fire TV. Well, they're only like $30. Great, let me plug that in. And okay, great. Now I have, hey, Alexa, can I watch whatever? I'm sure I'm triggering people right now if you're listening to this on speakers. And so it's all about ecosystem, keeping you inside the ecosystem. And Google does the exact same thing.
Yep.
Google wants you to buy the Chromecast, and they want you to buy the Google Home or Nest Home or Nest Audio, releasing on Wednesday, to then say, hey, because I'm not going to say it out loud because I do have a speaker sitting right in front of me. I have a Nest Mini sitting right in front of me, which I use to turn down the thermostat on my Nest thermostat, and which I use to cast music or to my other Nest speakers, which I then use to cast Netflix to my Chromecast. So it's all about keeping you inside their ecosystem. I don't think for a second Amazon wants to be a cloud gaming company. I don't believe they have any desire whatsoever to be a cloud gaming company. But they realized if they lose even 2% of the potential sales of Fire Sticks that they could have to people who buy a Chromecast Ultra because they want to give Stadia a try, that is millions to billions of dollars over annualized over however many years. You kill the Fire TV revenue stream by 2 or 3%, you're talking tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. So if what that means is They then create this tool. They've already got AWS. AWS is number one in the ecosystem, so they've already got AWS out there. It takes
Yep.
5 seconds flat to spin up an EC2 container for Windows. I do it in my day job. My company does it all the time. It takes absolutely nothing then to reach out to all these companies and say, hey, you already sell your games through Amazon.com. You want to go ahead and just put them on this platform and we'll give you 50 cents off of every monthly subscription. Great, fantastic. Stadia's doing it too. You want to do it with us? Fantastic. You know how hard it is with Stadia? It's so easy with us. It's all Windows. And they say, great. So then, and then they recoup a little bit of the cost of that through the $6 a month. That's a loss leader. They're absolutely losing money on $6 a month. I guarantee it, because you're not paying the $60 for the game, of which 30% goes to them. Yet we don't know if that business model will change. So it's simply about figuring out ways to increase the number of sales and keep you inside the ecosystem without going somewhere else. And doesn't hurt that because they're directly integrated with Twitch, now more people who buy Luna will be able to stream on Twitch, and they will be able to run those handy dandy ads at the beginning, in the top, and in the middle, which is ticked off all the Twitch streamers. Because it's just one more way for them to circle the wagons in there. Oh, and hey, you want to check out the latest games on Luna? You're going to have to head to Amazon.com and scroll through the list. And while you're scrolling through that list, on the side, there's that little thing that says, hey, by the way, do you need to order more of the toothpaste you bought from us last week? Because you can put it in your cart right now. That's all it is. It's keeping you in the ecosystem. I don't believe for a second that there is a department of people at Amazon that said, it would be killer is if we become cloud gamers. I don't think that exists. I think there's a branch now because somebody above them on the Fire TV team said, yeah, we got to do this. Can you just start making phone calls? And they said, sure, why not? Give me a new title. Senior Vice President of Cloud Gaming. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very Amazon, like whatever they do is very reactional. And we've seen that with a lot of the things that they've done, especially I know they try to create their own version of like Allbirds shoes. They do it with the Amazon Basics line, which, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, those prices are like way low. Like, but
Yep.
but man,
and I mean, and they own, it's Whole Foods Market. It's just yet
Yep.
another opportunity to put you in their system. They bought
Yep.
Audible because it's a yet another opportunity for you to have a credit card on file with them that makes it so easy for you to clear everything else. They own IMDb. I don't know if you know that. Like,
Yep, I knew that.
It's insane the number of companies that they own. We're talking more than 100 of these little companies that they bought, and it's all just to continue to increase the amount of time you spend in their world so that they can get just another $2 off you here and $2 off you there. Because when you multiply that times 300 million people in the United States alone, that's a lot of money that you're suddenly giving them that you would not have been before.
Right.
And gaming is just yet another way for that to be another option, that they offer you.
Yep. I completely agree with that. And so let's talk about something different. Let's talk about the controllers for Stadia and Luna. So Luna announced the.
You mean the Nintendo Switch Pro controller that they announced? Oh, I'm sorry. That's like.
Yeah,
No shade,
I mean,
no shade.
it basically looks like a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, but with purple accents on the lights and stuff like that. It's $49.99 in early access, but once the early access period stops, then it'll be $69.99, matching the price of the Google Stadia controller. So, and I hear that the Luna controller has Bluetooth because it needs to connect to the Fire Stick.
BLE,
So,
which is a big differentiator from the Stadia controller.
It
At
is.
least people have done teardowns, and to my knowledge, nobody's found a Bluetooth radio in there. So unless there's something hidden in there attached to another circuit that nobody's turned on, it is Bluetooth ready, which means it's going to be an HID controller and it's ready to go with the Fire Sticks. But more importantly, you're also going to be able to link your Xbox controller, your DualShock, Switch Joy-Cons, Pro Controller, whatever you have, up to your Fire Stick and play on Luna. So you don't even necessarily have to buy their controller, which again is probably a loss leader for them.
Right.
Granted, it doesn't look like it's the most. Anyways, no shade. I'm sure they're maybe they're cutting even on it. And so even then they just, again, you could just go, well, I already have a Xbox and I want to buy another. Oh, look, a Fire Stick and I can play on the Luna thing. Cool. Yeah, I'll do that because I can throw the Fire Stick on my TV in the den and play and stream some games that I can't play on my. Oh, and they're cross play and a cross save, so that'll work and and that just works, and it just makes yet another opportunity for that stuff to sell you one more gadget or try to keep you in the ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, I completely, or like it's strange because like Amazon, like it's something that we knew was coming for a while, but like, yeah, we never really expected this to come like at, an event that was just about like the echoes and the ring
Gadgetry.
drones and yeah. So like that was something I didn't expect. But what I do expect to happen is that in the early access period, it's $6 a month. I expect that price to increase once we get out of the early access. And I wanted to know if you think it's going to, or that price is going to increase or decrease depending, increase or decrease after the early access period is over.
I mean, it's gonna go up, but there's another factor in all of this that we haven't brought up yet, and it's Amazon Prime. Amazon already has you, most of us, for $129 US a year on Prime. So I would not doubt if there's some mechanism of, Luna Plus is, X99 a month now, and then that price changes on March 1st. Oh, but if you subscribe to Prime, you can keep it at the lower cost as a benefit for Prime members. Hey, you're not subscribed to Prime? Click here to subscribe. I would be willing to bet that it does end up being a tie-in to Prime. The fact that there's no Prime tie-in to this yet that we know of, whether that's, free games on Twitch Prime via Luna or whatever else, there's going to have to be something. There's going to be some kind of connection there because it all circles back again to Prime. And, I have Prime, which means I'm going to want to go out there and buy more stuff because then I get it in 2 days. And ecosystem.
Yep. So I do think that because they give out freebies on Twitch Prime, I think there's probably going to be some opportunities where, if they have a game on Luna, like it'll be, or the only way you can get that perk is to get Luna. And so, like, if I were Amazon, like that would totally be what I would do. And with, I'm trying to think of what else to say, but
can I mention one other kind of general thought on this?
Yeah.
I said it at the very beginning that the rising tide lifts all boats, and I say it all the time on our podcast because now that Stadia has a real competitor, there might be a change. We don't know. Stadia has always been very clear about the fact that they are playing a very long game. When you look at interviews that they've done, and last year they did a video series with Google's partners or with the Stadia Games and Entertainment team and the Stadia technology team, and they've always said over and over again, this is stuff that will take years. We've got a roadmap and plans for 5 years or more. So I think what's going to be interesting to see is there's no way that people at Stadia didn't know this was coming. Leaks happen, corporate espionage happens. There's no way in the world that Stadia didn't know this was coming. Maybe they didn't know the timing. Maybe they didn't know some of the specifics. But it seems unlikely that you're Google, the company best known for gathering information for the world, and that you didn't know this was happening. So the question then becomes, does this put up new street signs and change the flow of traffic for Stadia? Does this change their plans, or does Stadia continue to say, guys, we're just going to do what we're doing? We've got to grow. There is a spreadsheet and there's a line, and that line is steady, and it's just going to stay steady, and we'll see you in 5 years. Because the thing about both of these platforms, really, but the thing about Stadia is, and Luna, you didn't walk away from anything. If I never bought the Stadia controller that's literally sitting 7 inches away from me right now, I could still go to stadia.google.com and play on Stadia. If I don't buy the Luna controller, I'm actually probably going to be able to hook up my Stadia controller to my phone and use it to play Luna. I've been using my Stadia controller to play on Game Pass from Xbox. So there's nothing to walk away from. So when it's always funny to me to see people, well, now there's Luna, Stadia's dead, and who would ever go to Stadia? Stadia doesn't need us to. It doesn't matter, because if in 2 years Stadia Games and Entertainment releases a game that looks unbelievably amazing, that leverages the power of the cloud to do incredible things that we've never seen in a video game before, at any point in time, you can go to stadia.google.com, put your $60 down, and start playing with your mouse and keyboard, or with your Xbox controller, or with your Luna controller, because the Luna controller is probably going to be HID, which means you can just hook it up to your whatever and start playing. So these companies are playing a very long game. And I would imagine Luna, to some extent, will be doing that too. But it's one of these games where, bias or not, stay here or not, you want to walk away, go right ahead. Because 2 years from now, we're Google. We still have your account. Stadia.google.com will be there if you decide not to subscribe, or you sell your controller to somebody or whatever else. It's not going to matter. You can just come back. And Luna, interestingly enough, Luna might be that way, at least for right now. You have to have early access, but presumably there will be a day when Luna is just a channel that you add to your Fire TV. And so if you happen to have an Xbox controller or whatever else, you pair that with your Fire TV stick, and then you click, cool, accept terms and conditions, start Luna Plus, and that channel just pops up, and it'll be the exact same thing. You decide you don't want to pay for it next month, you hit cancel, and then 6 months from now, when that really killer game comes out that's not going to be on, or it's going to be in the Luna Plus subscription, and it's also going to be on Xbox, but you don't want to pay the $60 for it on Xbox, so you'd rather just pay the $9.99 to re-up Luna Plus for the month and play that game for 6 days until you beat it and then cancel your That's all there for you in the future when you're ready to have it. I think that's why these companies are playing a completely different game. I've said it before as well. They're writing a totally different story. The story of, you buy the $400 box that sits under your TV, and then you buy the discs or cartridges that go in it, and that lasts you for however many years, and then 5 years later you buy another $400 under your TV, and the marketing works this way, and the community works this way, and we're going to talk about backwards compatibility, and we're going to talk about the increase in speed, and we're going to talk about that's an old story. We're just seeing new chapters in the exact same book. Stadia and now Luna are writing a brand new story, and even between the two of them, those companies are writing it from very different angles and a very different perspective. And it's going to be interesting to see where all this pans out. I could not be more excited for the next 5 years in gaming, because at the end of that, we're going to have insane cloud-powered games from Stadia Games and Entertainment, and we're going to see what weird, twisty things Jade Raymond comes up with, and where Aaron Hoffman John decides to let Skynet create a video game. We're going to see insane things happen there. And then we're going to see Luna going, hey, you know what? How about a racing game channel? You really like racing games? $4.99 a month, and we'll give you 80 different racing games. Or, hey, you really like JRPGs? We got a JRPG channel. It's got 30 of the best games in it, and it's $2.99 a month. Hit subscribe now. And that's going to be an interesting thing to happen in the market as well. And that's all where all this is headed. And in the meantime, not that they're not going to do just fine for themselves, but you're going to have Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, Microsoft to a lesser degree, sitting back and going, you guys want to buy the next box? It's $600 and you can have it, and it's totally cloud. It's all cloud powered because y'all are doing cloud now more than anything else. Then could you please buy the next piece of plastic under your TV? That's where all this is heading. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a Series X2 and a PlayStation 6, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there is not a PlayStation 7 and there is not a Series X3 or whatever comes after it, because it's 100% cloud at that point.
Yeah, I don't really expect consoles to be much of a thing for much longer, at least after this upcoming generation. Though I do wonder what kinds of games would come from both Amazon and Google, because we already see Amazon, before any of this Luna stuff had happened years ago. In fact, they had bought out a couple of studios, and so they had released a couple of games as well that didn't really perform that well on PC, like Crucible, and
that one hasn't really done so well. And then New World coming out next year, beta right now, and some people really like it, some people aren't super happy with it. So it'll be interesting to see where Amazon Game Studios lands.
Right.
I don't know, maybe I just haven't followed them enough, but I don't feel like I've heard of the same levels of crazy acquisitions and things of that nature. But it could very well be just end up the situation that they come out with insane, amazing things, and they also use the power of the cloud to do crazy, insane, amazing things. And then we have two different studios who are doing insane, amazing things using the cloud, which would be even better, because then that's just going to push them to compete even harder for those well-earned cloud dollars.
Exactly. And I think that they may not be creating games that leverage the cloud right now, or at least in Amazon's case. Google has had that in their mind since day one, with especially, or like you said, Jade Raymond and Shannon Studstill, who I think she was the one who previously worked at Sony, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she was at Sony Santa Monica.
Yeah, so she was one of the people behind God of War. So it will be very interesting to see what her studio comes up with for the cloud generation. Because like now we have an entire generation of people, especially kids, who are growing up with cloud services. And you're seeing that especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, where kids are getting Chromebooks from their school, or they have to buy one now, and like a lot of Chromebooks are sold out. And so once you see, and so I think it's interesting to see those people grow up, without even thinking about needing a console whatsoever. And so, what do you think about just or what do you think about how Amazon and Google are trying to reach that or that generation of people who are, are like the cloud first generation, if I
Yeah, we're certainly at a point where there are expectations that come up with every generation that change how the gaming industry and the tech industry in general work. 10 years ago, the advent, or however many years ago it was, the advent of Xbox Live, and Gold and all that, basically said you have to have an online service and it has to work, and I have to be able to find my friends and play with my friends and message with my friends. And when Xbox Live rolled that out, it was, oh, you're gonna handle all that? Well, what about the LAN parties, and what about the, no, we're just gonna handle it, and we're gonna do the matchmaking, and we're gonna get you set up, you can add friends, and now every system has to have that. You have to have a friends list, you have to be able to party chat, you have to be able to do all those things. It's just the expectation.
yeah.
The prior to the Sony PlayStation 2, 20 years ago, or however long it was, you could not put your GameCube discs into a Nintendo 64. They just didn't work. You couldn't put your Dreamcast discs into a Sega Genesis. It didn't work. And then Sony PlayStation 2 came around and said, no, you can keep playing the PlayStation 1. And now people get up in arms if backwards compatibility is not a thing. Even the current generations are getting in trouble for trying to move away from that and
Yep.
evolving and limiting that. So I think we have now moved into a point now where you're exactly right. The 15-year-olds who are buying the pizza and playing, for 12 hours at a stretch on Saturdays are not going to be looking to the DVD rack to watch a movie. They're going to go to Netflix. They're not
Right.
going to be pulling a CD off the shelf to listen to music. They're going to Spotify. And the same thing is
Right.
going to happen with gaming. It's at this point, in a lot of cases, I would imagine, I look up the stats on this at some point, but when I owned a Switch recently,
Mhm.
and I own a gaming PC that's capable, and I don't go to a store and buy any games. I just download them off the eShop, or I download them off of Steam or Epic or whatever else. And so the concept of going in, and I'm a 30s, I'm a kid of the 80s. I walked into many a Walmart and pulled the box off the shelf and opened the little flap and read what the features were and took that to the checkout counter and took it home. That's how I bought World of Warcraft from day one, the little Burning Crusade double pack and Diablo 2, and that's what you did. And now that's kind of absurd. If you go to the game rack, the PC gaming rack at least of Walmart, it's like 600 solitaire options, because you're probably buying it from your Aunt Sally, who is not going to go to the cloud and download a thing. She's going to want to put CD-ROM in her drive. And the
Right.
exact same thing happening on the cloud. We're getting to a point where you just download the game. What do you mean I got to go buy the game? I'm going to go to GameStop to look at cases and say, oh, that looks fun, and then I'm going to go buy the game on my phone. That's why all the GameStops, half of the GameStops now are Funko Pops, because they need something else to make the money.
Right.
And that's where this is heading in gaming infrastructure. You just don't get a CD, you just don't get a DVD, and it's about to be the point where you just don't buy the disc. You just download it from the shops. And the next logical step on that is, why do I even need to download it? Just give me the game. If I have an internet connection that is capable enough to download that 148 gigabyte Modern Warfare, why won't you just send me Modern Warfare over the stream? And
Right.
that's where all this is heading. And so there's absolutely generations that will, it's not going to be a choice for these companies. They're just going to
Yeah.
expect it, that I'm not going to wait for you to patch. Why would I wait for you to patch this game? Just give me the game. I'm not going to wait to download that. Oh, it says it's 300 gigabytes. I'm not downloading that. That's going to take way too long. I'll go to
Right.
Stadia and play it instead. I'll go to Luna and pay, and play it instead. I'll go to Game Pass Ultimate and stream it on my phone instead. That's where all of this is heading. And it can't get here fast enough for as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this generation of cloud gaming, and like I've said previously in this podcast, when companies compete, we win. And like Ed Boon, the creator of Mortal Kombat, he's even paying attention to this cloud
Oh,
gaming space.
Major
Um,
Nelson has a Stadia account. Major Nelson has posted in the Stadia subreddit before.
Wait, what?
So, yes, Major Nelson has posted in the Stadia subreddit before on Reddit in comments for things and is talking about his founder's account, and he absolutely has a Stadia account. And there's no doubt in my mind, if you go to the house of Phil Harrison, who's VP of Stadia, or the head of Stadia, he's got an Xbox, a PlayStation, a Switch, and a very competent PC. No doubt
Yeah.
about it.
Oh
If
yeah.
you go to Doug Bowser's house in Redmond, California, he's got a Switch sitting on the TV and a PlayStation and an Xbox and a competent gaming PC because
Right.
you just have to. You have to know what your competitors are doing. So
Right.
there's no doubt in my mind that all of the people who are in the upper echelons at Stadia, and probably a lot of the lower echelon too, are subscribed to Game Pass Ultimate because they want to see what their streaming is like, because you have to know what your competition is doing.
Right. And and we mentioned previously that because of Amazon's Windows backend, and or they're going to have a lot of games. Do you see that, or do you see people, um, or do you see people who like notice the deficiencies in Stadia's library compared to Luna's, you know, I guess trying to bug the developers of those games to try and port them over to Stadia, or to try and make at least like Linux ports of their games? Um,
I've read a lot of articles about this, particularly when the news that Amazon was going to be coming off of Windows system, and I've read from a lot of Linux developers that have basically said, calm it down. It's not hard to port things to Linux. A lot of us already know what Linux is, and game developers are familiar with Linux. It's not hard. Don't quit freaking out. And so I'm not worried. I'm not worried about that. What is different is if your studio is using if you're using Unreal Engine or using Unity, Stadia's got a plug-in. They've all said it is minimal effort to move on to Stadia. If you're not, if you are Bethesda using your own engines, or you are EA using your own engines, or whatever else, then you're going to have to put in the time to do all of the infrastructural stuff to make all the hooks land, and to get Stadia to be able to port off of there real fast. But once you've done the infrastructure work, then you're good. You're at that point, it's just a matter of the games that are already in development, throw the hooks in, let Stadia happen. That's what we're seeing with Watch Dogs Legions and Valhalla and Cyberpunk 2077 and all these other games.
Yep.
The next Madden and the next FIFA. And then with other resources, okay, hey, these games are selling pretty well. You know what? Let's go ahead and bring a couple more things from the catalog out. So it's that acceleration versus top speed thing. I'm not worried about it. I don't see I don't see Stadia's library as big of a challenge as everybody else thinks it is. If only because I've got access to, I think I have 60 games on Stadia between the pro stuff, the stuff I've bought, and the things that I have review codes for as a Stadia journalist.
Right.
Which I hate. It's not like I'm not Jake Tapper. I'm a dude who has a podcast about Stadia, but I'm on press lists, so I guess that makes me qualified. And I still flip through trying to figure out what I want to play. Now that I've added Game Pass Ultimate into that, and now that I have a computer that's competent at running Steam, I spend more time trying to figure out what I want to play than actually playing anything. So the size of the library doesn't necessarily mean anything if if this is a 60-hour game you want to play, and you've got 5 hours a week in which you can play it, you've got 12 weeks ahead of you on that game, while in the background, Stadia is adding more games to their library. If that is a 10-hour game and you've got 10 hours to play it, then done. You're knocking it out, you're calling it a day. But, Borderlands 3, I probably spent a month on. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I spent at least a month to a month and a half on. Final Fantasy 15, I spent a month and a half on. So it's not like having 400 more games on Stadia would change anything for me. I'm going to play the games I want. It's going to take me as long to play them as it's going to take me. And, so I think Luna may end up suffering the same thing. If I can detour us for 1 second. There's a concept out there called decision paralysis. And you may have heard of the tale of Buridan's donkey. It's an example given in business school about decision paralysis. And it's an ancient parable about if you take a donkey and you place it between two equally sized bales of hay with no differences between them, it will not be able to make a decision. It will starve to death and it will collapse over dead. Now, in reality, at a certain point, the donkey's just going to reach over and start eating one of the two bales. It's primate logic or donkey logic. But I have this thing that happens to me on occasion, which I call going into donkey mode. And I'm scrolling through my game library and everything looks equally good. There's a few things that I'm like, nah to that, but there's like 5, 6, 7, 8 games that I might want to play. And I can never pick one. So I just turn on Netflix instead. Or I'm scrolling through Netflix trying to find something to watch, and I can't find anything I like, so I go to Hulu and I queue up the Golden Girls because it's my favorite show. That's huge libraries are not nearly as important as people think they are. The only time it's important is when the game you want to play isn't on that library. That's the only time it matters. And most of the time, at least for me, that game for me right now is Final Fantasy VII Remake. You know why I can't play it on Stadia? Because nobody can. It's only on PlayStation 4 as an exclusive. So it doesn't matter if that game is not in the library. When Watch Dogs Legion comes out, you know where it's going to be? Every single platform known to man. Cyberpunk 2077, every single platform. Valhalla, every single platform. Madden 21, every single platform. FIFA 21, every single platform. At a certain point, the library will be there, and then it's just a matter of, did the one game you wanted end up making it? That's why I'm almost more excited to see things this past week. Again, week full of news. This past week, one of the major announcements was the Stadia Makers program. We finally found out the freshman class of Stadia Makers. For those who don't know what that is, Stadia Makers is a program for Unity developers to get some Stadia tech support, a Stadia dev kit, a little bit of financial incentive at an undisclosed rate, and basically you get a hotline to the Stadia dev team if you promise that day and date you'll bring your game to Stadia. Doesn't have to be exclusive to Stadia. If you want to do that, I'm sure they'll say yes, but they just want to make sure that if you're releasing on November 4th, that Stadia also gets it on November 4th. So we just found out about our freshman class of those games. And I'll tell you, scrolling through those lists, games like Under the End, Death Carnival, there were games on that list that I have seen in every single indie showcase this summer. Every last one of them. Tokyo Game Show and all of them, in New Game Expo, every single one of them. And none of them ever had a Stadia logo on them. Not a single one. But hey, Stadia Makers program, here are the first 7 games. And that one I saw the trailer for over and over again. That one I saw the trailer for. I've done interviews with some of these developers, and they basically said, we couldn't say anything about it, and then we made the announcement, and hey, we're excited to become a Stadia. So again, the library will be there, and all of these games are underway, and there are contracts on desks in filing cabinets right now that we will never know about to bring the biggest games in the world to Stadia and the smallest games in the world to Stadia and Luna and all these other things. And we're just got to get there. We got a little more patience. Just got to get there.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that is going to conclude this section. Thank you once again, Avery, for joining the show. Really appreciate it. And in case any of our listeners are new here and didn't listen to the previous episode, where can they find
go
you?
back and listen to the previous episode where I talk about Stadia. But note the Twitter handle, and thank you. I heard that you. I heard the update that you did in the recording of the podcast. If you want to find me online, you can follow me on Twitter at CharmCityA. CharmCitya, Charm City A. I recently changed my Twitter handle to more match my Stadia profile. If you want to friend me on Stadia, I'm at Charm City there. You can follow. I am the video content manager and the host of StadiaSource's Roundtable podcast. So StadiaSource is the #1 source for Stadia news and reviews. We are the industry leader site for Stadia news, reviews, opinion pieces, editorials, all that great stuff for Stadia. And so you can follow us on Twitter at StadiaSource. You can also find us on YouTube on StadiaSource channel. And keep an eye out. Every Thursday, we record our Roundtable podcast live at 5 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. British, because half of our Roundtable are Brits. On Thursday evenings, and we certainly encourage anybody to check those out or download us on Pocket Cast, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever it is that you get your fine podcasts.
Thank you, Avery. And of course, just like last time, I'll have the links in the show notes right below that subscribe or follow button, depending on which platform you're listening on. And yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you once again, Avery, and we'll see you in the next one.
Glad to be here.
Sandra Bland, Terrence Crutcher, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, Mike Brown, Alton Sterling, Ahmad Arbery, Walter Scott, Breonna Taylor, Eric Harris, George Floyd, Tony Robinson, Keith Childress, Romaine Brisbane, Betty Jones, Tamir Rice, Kevin Matthews, Laquan McDonald, Michael Noel, Michael Brown Jr., Roy Nelson, Eric Garner. These are just some of the names of people who have been murdered by police and have gotten either a slap on the wrist or have gotten away with committing such a heinous crime scot-free. If you are an American, or even if you're not an American, you should be outraged by this, as I am. This cannot continue to happen, and it speaks to a very long history of racism and police brutality here in the United States of America, and also in other countries as well. Police brutality is not a U.S. exclusive problem. It's happening around the globe. So, how can you help stop this? Well, you can go and protest, but be very peaceful about it, of course. And if you don't want to go to the protests, that's fine. You can also donate to many different charities that are helping with the cause. If you can't do that, you can also sign petitions to help the cause as well and share those petitions. And for all of these suggestions that I've made, you can do all of them and encourage your friends and family to do the same, because staying silent is staying complicit, and we cannot stay complicit any longer. This change needs to happen now. And so I just want to leave you with this message. Black lives matter, always and forever. All lives cannot matter until Black lives matter. Remember that. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cels Circuits Podcast. Remember to wear a mask, wash your hands, and practice social distancing as much as possible. Also, if you want to follow us on social media, I'll have a link in the show notes right below that subscribe or follow button, depending on which platform you're on. And that's it. Our intro and outro music is made by Tiffy3. I'm Chibeze Anakor, signing off.